Welcome back to How It's Made. The electric guitar dates back to the 1920s. The original idea was to amplify the sound of an acoustic guitar. By the 1950s, the instrument underwent a radical change, its body evolving from the traditional hollow shape to a thin, solid block of wood. So, let's rock and roll. Guitar bodies are usually made of mahogany, poplar or maple. Lightweight woods that are flexible enough to produce the right balance of treble, mid-range and bass vibrations. First, a plank of wood is sawn into specific widths. The pieces are planed to a specific thickness, usually in the range of 5 to 10 centimetres. They're given an identification number. Damp wood tends to warp, so the pieces have to go into a heated room until their moisture content drops to less than 6%. This takes about 2 months. Once the wood dries out, the pieces are glued and clamped together. The glue is water-based, so the block has to go back into the drying room for another 2 months. When it comes out, it goes onto a holding device. Then, a computer-guided cutting machine uses 8 different heads, one after the other, to gradually carve the body shape. This is a semi-acoustic model, so the body has some hollowed-out areas. A fine sanding smooths the surface, and the contour is trimmed at a 45-degree angle using a stainless steel blade. Then it's sanded again. By this point, round metal fixtures, which will hold the bolts that attach the body and neck, have been inserted. To construct the neck, mahogany or hard rock maple are sliced in two, using a diamond edge saw for a perfect cut. Then, a 1.27mm thick sheet of maple veneer is glued onto one piece. This will be the front surface of the neck. Now the piece is turned over and glued on the other one. Flipping inverts the wood grain. This strengthens the neck, enabling it to withstand the tension of the guitar strings. The maple veneer hides and reinforces the joint. The components are clamped in a vise for 3 hours until the glue sets. A computer-guided cutting machine contours the neck shape and cuts a groove down the middle for a steel bar called the truss rod. When the neck bows from tension created by heavy gauge strings, it can be straightened by adjusting the protruding end of the truss rod. Next, the fingerboard. It's made of maple, ebony or rosewood. After the fingerboard is glued over the truss rod, the neck is placed into a vacuum press. The press sucks out all the air, compressing the components into one solid unit. Once the glue dries, the neck goes onto a computer-guided carving machine. Its 12 different cutting heads finalize the shape. Next, a 22-blade saw simultaneously cuts very precise slots for 22 fret wires, the metal lines on the fingerboard. A worker rounds off and smooths the back of the neck against a belt sander. Then installs the fret wires. The wires are made of nickel and lead. They have teeth on the bottom that grab the wood. Finally, the sides of the neck are run against a sanding belt. This trims off the excess fret wire and rounds off the edges of the fingerboard. Back to the body now. A worker puts it in a silkscreen printer to apply the company name. The ink dries in seconds under ultraviolet light. After a sealant is applied to block the wood's pores, up to 22 coats of wood stain and lacquer are sprayed on. This protects the wood and gives it a sexy gloss finish. Now onto the mechanics. An electric guitar works like this. A magnet and coil assembly called a pickup works like a mini microphone. It picks up the sound vibrations of the strings and sends them to an amplifier, which sends them to a speaker, which emits that trademark electric guitar sound. After a 6-week curing period, the painted and lacquered wood is sanded. Then buffed until the surface is so glossy it produces a mirror finish. Then it's polished with wax. If the frets aren't level, the guitar will buzz, so workers colour the top of each fret with a marker, then run a sheet of fine sandpaper down the fingerboard. The ink rubs off any frets that are higher than the rest and have to be filed down. But filing flattens the frets' edges, so they're rounded off using a special curved file. Then, with very fine sandpaper, the filing marks are buffed away. The fingerboard is cleaned with mineral oil. This also nourishes the rosewood so that it won't dry out and crack. Now, an Allen key is turned in the truss rod to straighten out the neck. This gauge measures the curve. When the needle hits 0, the neck is perfectly straight. Now the 6 tuning keys, one for each string. Depending on the model, these steel keys are plated with either gold, nickel or painted black. A digital gauge checks measurements before a thin piece of bone or plastic is inserted to space the strings. If it isn't precisely in the right position, tuning will be off and the strings will buzz. The neck is joined to the body. And now, the electronic components. Workers begin by soldering control knobs for the volume and tone to the pickup selector switch. One pickup will be just above the bridge. The pickup has one magnet and wire coil for each string. Standard electric guitars don't have a pickup at the bridge, but this model has one to enable the instrument to also sound like an acoustic guitar. Holes are drilled in the body for installing the bridge, using a template as a guide. The bridge is attached with screws. Then the bridge pickup is installed just above, and the body and neck pickups above that. Then they fix on the tremolo, a lever-activated set of steel springs that alters the tension of the strings. The musician uses the tremolo to create a quivering effect. The volume and tone knobs come next, tucked into a cavity in the back, then secured to the front with a nut. Now the pickup selector switch. It also comes through the back to the front of the instrument. Then the last electronic component is added, a jack for the cable going to the amplifier. Each pickup is tested. Now it's time to string the guitar. The strings are pulled from the back through the bridge in the front. Then wound onto the tuning keys using a drill with a special adapter. Then it's into a soundproof booth to tune the guitar with the help of a digital tuner. And now it's time for a test drive.